Imagine a house that keeps living after everyone inside is already dead. The cows are fed, the horses are groomed, the fireplace still smells like smoke. On the kitchen table, there's fresh bread, sliced not long ago. And only a few meters away, under hay and blankets, lie 6 bodies, their skulls smashed in. This isn't a horror movie. This is a real crime scene. Germany, 1922. A small, isolated farm called Hinterkaifeck. What makes this story terrifying isn't just the murders. It's what seems to have happened after. For several days, someone was living on that farm, feeding the animals, heating the house, while the owners lay dead in the barn and in their beds. We're going back more than a century into Bavarian fields, a broken family, and one of the darkest unsolved cases in European history. The Hinterkaifeck murders. Hinterkaifeck wasn't a village. It was a farm between fields and forest, about 70 kilometers north of Munich. Here lived the Gruber family. Andreas Gruber, 63, strict, hard, widely disliked. His wife, Cecilia, 72. Their daughter, Viktoria Gabriel, 35, a widow back with her parents. And Victoria's children, 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old Joseph. There was also a maid, until she suddenly quit. She insisted the house was haunted. She heard footsteps above her room, voices, movement in the attic at night, and became so frightened she refused to stay. A new maid was hired, 44-year-old Maria Baumgartner. She arrived at Hinterkaifeck on the very day the murders happened. She never went home. The Grubers already had a dark reputation. Andreas was seen as cruel and controlling. Rumors whispered that he had an incestuous relationship with Viktoria, that little Josef might not be the son of her dead husband, but of her own father. Andreas had once been convicted of an improper relationship with her and even served time, though the case was later dropped. This was not a happy, open household. It was a closed world of tension, shame, and secrets. In the weeks before the murders, things grew stranger. First, the maid quit because of footsteps in the attic. Andreas checked the rafters himself and found nothing. The noises continued. Then he found a newspaper from Munich lying in the snow. No one nearby subscribed to it. The mailman swore he hadn't delivered it. Next, a house key went missing. Andreas searched pockets, rooms, barn. No key. And one morning he saw footprints in fresh snow, tracks coming out of the forest, straight toward the farm, and no tracks going back. Imagine standing at your door, looking across empty fields, knowing someone walked out of the woods to your home, and, as far as the snow shows, never left. A strange newspaper, a missing key, footsteps above the ceiling, tracks that end at your door. Together, they look like the outline of an unseen visitor. The murders took place on March 31st, 1922. Sometime that day, the new maid Maria arrived for her first shift. She unpacked a few things in a small room and tried to calm her nerves. By nightfall, she would be dead. We don't know exactly how the killings unfolded, but investigators later pieced together one likely chain of events. That evening, family members were probably lured, one by one, into the barn. Maybe they heard a noise. Maybe someone called them outside. Inside the barn, someone waited with a heavy, sharp farm tool, a mattock or hoe. Andreas, old Cecilia, Viktoria, little Cecilia. Each was struck in the head, skull crushed. Their bodies were stacked in a rough pile and covered loosely with hay and sheets. Then the killer went back to the house. Maria was attacked in her room. In the nursery, 2-year-old Joseph was killed in his crib. 6 people dead in one night. In the following days, the village noticed things were wrong. The children never came to school. Viktoria missed choir. The family skipped Sunday church. The mailman saw letters and newspapers piling up. yet the animals seemed cared for. At night, neighbors saw a light in the house. On some days, smoke rose from the chimney. The cows didn't cry from hunger. Someone was feeding the animals, using the fireplace, moving through the rooms. But none of the Grubers were seen alive. On April 4th, neighbor Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a man with close ties to Viktoria, went to the farm with 2 others. They opened the barn, saw hay, dark stains, then a foot, a hand, faces, 4 bodies stacked under hay. Inside the house, they found Maria dead in her room and Joseph lifeless in his crib. 6 victims, dead for days. Somebody had been living there, sleeping in that house, walking past those bodies again and again. Police from Munich arrived, but it was 1922. Forensics was basic, and the scene had already been disturbed. Villagers had walked everywhere, moved objects, touched the dead. Still, some facts emerged. All 6 victims died from blows to the head. Most had been struck several times. 7-year-old Cecilia may have lived for a short while after the attack. Clumps of her hair were found in her hands. There was no clear sign of robbery. Money and valuables remained in the house. Later, when the farm was demolished, workers discovered a blood-stained mattock hidden high in the rafters, almost certainly the murder weapon. Then the case became even stranger. Authorities removed the heads of all 6 victims. Their skulls were sent to Munich for further analysis. Some reports say even to spiritualists and mediums. The headless bodies were buried in the local cemetery. During World War II, the skulls were lost, probably destroyed amid bombings and chaos. To this day, the graves at Hinterkaifeck hold only headless remains. The killer is still unknown. The investigation dragged on for years. Over 100 people were questioned. No one was ever charged. The main suspect in many minds is the man who found the bodies, Lorenz Schlittenbauer. He'd reportedly had a relationship with Viktoria. Some believed he was Joseph's real father. There were arguments over money and support. Witnesses say that when Lorenz entered the house on April 4th, he seemed strangely unafraid that the killer might still be there. He moved bodies, handled objects, disturbed the scene, later saying he was looking for surviving children. He was questioned repeatedly, but never charged. No hard evidence tied him directly to the murders. Another theory says Viktoria's husband, Karl Gabriel, officially killed in World War I, somehow survived, took a new identity, and returned in secret to find rumors of incest and a child that might not be his. It's dramatic, but there's no solid proof he ever came back. Others suggest a stranger, a drifter, a robber, a hired killer. But if it was only about money, why leave valuables untouched? Why stay on the farm for days, caring for animals, lighting fires? Which leads to the most chilling idea. What if the killer wasn't outside at all? What if, before the murders, they were already inside? The maid's footsteps in the attic, the mysterious Munich newspaper, the missing key, the footprints that came from the forest to the farm and never went back. Together, they suggest a hidden guest. Someone who slipped into the farm, hid in the attic or barn, watched the family from the shadows, and waited. Then, when the moment was right, they lured each victim into the barn and killed them quietly, one by one. And after everyone was dead, they stayed. They milked the cows, fed the animals, cooked food, kept the fire going, lived there for days among corpses until they finally walked away. Decades later, in the 2000s and 2010s, German investigators and criminology students re-examined the case. One investigator said they had a strong idea who the killer was, but since everyone involved was long dead, they chose not to reveal the name. Officially, Hinterkaifeck remains unsolved. The farm itself didn't survive. Within a year, the buildings were demolished. Today there is no farmhouse, No barn, just a field and a small concrete memorial stone, marking where the farm once stood. The bodies lie in a cemetery in nearby Weidhofen, headless, because their skulls were lost long ago. The weapon was found too late. Any useful traces are gone. Somewhere in history, the person, or people, who walked into that farm, killed 6 people, lived among their bodies, and then vanished, was never truly brought into the light. Why does this case still haunt people after more than 100 years? Because of everything together. The isolated farm, the rumors and secrets, the missing key and strange newspaper, the footprints that stop at the door, the maid who hears footsteps above her head, the killer quietly living on the farm after the murders, feeding the animals, baking bread, acting as if the place now belonged to them. And because, after all the interviews and all the theories, there is still no final answer. Some stories are scary because they show you the monster. This story is terrifying because it never does. Maybe it was a jealous neighbor. Maybe a stranger in the attic. Or maybe it was someone whose name never left the case files, someone whose secret died with them. The Hinterkaifeck murders are like that. 6 people died. A farm was erased. The world moved on. But the questions remain. Who walked out of the forest and into that farm? How long did they watch the family before they struck? How many nights did they lie awake on that attic floor, listening to the silence below, knowing that no one would ever know the truth? Sometimes, the most frightening stories are the ones where the monster walks away, and no one ever proves it was them.